There is a belief that other injuries can lead to pelvic pain, especially if those injuries are in parts of the body that are connected to the pelvis. Maybe a hip injury or a tight hamstring or something else that's going on. So I wanted to ask Dr. Howard Schubiner, who is a mind-body medicine pioneer. He's the author of Unlearn Your Pain. He's been a physician for decades. I wanted to ask him this question because I found on a pelvic health website a statement: changes in hip mechanics, soft tissue, and strength or coordination may contribute to pelvic symptoms if this affects the route of the pudendal nerve. So my question for you, Dr. Schubiner, is, does a previous injury have the ability to create chronic pelvic
My
pain?
perception would be, my medical opinion would be no. No. The injuries heal. And if someone has a hip injury, the hip injury will heal. If they have a tendonitis or bursitis, if they have a fracture, if they have a muscle pull, all those injuries heal. And if they've healed and they're symptom free, and then months, weeks, months, or years later, they're suddenly developing pelvic pain. The reason that doctors and physical therapists say that is because they can't fathom that the pain could be coming from something other than a purely physical cause. So they say, well, it was probably from that old injury. An old injury can teach the brain how to create a certain type of pain. When you get an injury, you get pain, and the brain is creating that pain, but the brain is also learning that pain. And then later, months or years later, those neural circuits for that painful condition are still there and can be learned, or can be reactivated by the brain. And the idea that a hip problem is going to cause pressure on the pudendal nerve does not make sense to me. It's just anatomically, I do not think that's possible.
So yeah, what I found happens with a lot of people is they think it could be a previous injury, or they might think, oh, I have a pelvic tilt, or I have a really tight hamstring. I've just always had a really tight hamstring, or etc. Like it was a sports injury or just a weird mobility thing going on in their body. So they look to do stretches. They typically go on YouTube. They try to figure out, how do I stretch this out? Or how do I do pelvic floor stretches? Because now I have pelvic tension or pelvic pain, and I think it's connected.
Right.
And then they might, I'll go to physical therapy. But what happens is, I think this is what muddies the water for people. They'll start to do stretches and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel a little better now,
Sure.
right? Because I feel like my hamstrings more open up and my pelvic tension went down. And then that kind of gets them stuck in this teeter totter. Like, what's your perspective on helping someone discern this is, biomechanical, or this is something that your brain is creating, like you just mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. And this is a super important area. And of course, what happens is if the danger signal is going on in the brain, that can cause the muscles to be tight. What can cause the muscles to be tense? And when you do stretches or yoga or massage or whatever, chiropractic, the muscles are loosened up. You say, oh, I'm feeling better. And then an hour later or a day later or a week later, the brain's making those muscles tight again. And so And so, as you talk about the root cause, to get to the root cause is to understand where it's coming from. And how do we do that? Well, we're just in the process of publishing this paper in the Journal of Pain about chronic neck and back pain. And in this paper, it's the first time that the criteria, what I call the FIT criteria, FIT criteria, are being published in a peer-reviewed journal. And the FIT criteria are the way that we determine if a particular symptom is coming from the brain or coming from a structural problem in the body. In other words, is it F functional, meaning it's in a wide area, meaning that there's no injury to explain it, that the tests have been normal, meaning that the pain is spreading over time, the pain occurred without a specific injury. If it's inconsistent, this is the I. If the pain varies, better in the morning or worse in the afternoon, it changes day to day. It comes and goes away. It shifts to different places. Sometimes it's in one part of the pelvis. Sometimes it's another part of the pelvis. We see this all the time. And the trigger, the FIT, the T part of it, is if the pain is triggered by sound or light or stress or or the weather, or it's triggered by movements that are inconsistent. So sometimes a movement will trigger the pain in one day, but the same movement might not trigger the pain the other day. Structural problems are consistent. They're consistent. I had a lady the other day, she said, I know this is a structural problem because the MRI shows that there's a structural problem. And I said, well, tell me about your pain. She says, well, it goes away for a few weeks at a time, and then it comes back, and then it goes away again. Well, how's that a structural problem? So many people with pelvic pain syndrome say, well, now the pain is, I get this rectal pain, it's really bad, but then it hurts in the glutes. And then that goes away, and then it hurts in the groin or the vulva or the testicles. And if the pain is moving around, then we know for sure that it's not a structural problem.